Welcome back to another episode of NBL Now. We are going around the country, catching up with all the teams throughout this free agency period ahead of NBL 26. And from the Sydney Kings, Chris Pongrass joins me with this one. And CP, I'm glad we get to talk to you because obviously the Kings made a massive splash early. It's been a little quieter since, but plenty to talk about, obviously, with the announcement from last week. But firstly, how you doing?
I'm great. I've been waiting for the call up, so I'm glad it's come my way. Things are good. Things are good in Sydney. Great weather. Building a good team. Planning a lot for this off season. A lot of great movement on the WNBL front too. So it's been a fun off season.
You are a very busy man, and I say that for talking about team building, not just one, but two teams with the WNBL. But obviously the announcement last week, big European powerhouses coming. They'll be playing each other at John Cain Arena, but then in Sydney being a part of that tournament and the excitement, obviously, for Sydney fans as well, for the Kings, it's unbelievable. I can't wait for
it. The fact that we're getting two powerhouse teams, Panathinaikos and Partizan, an amazing Serbian Greek community in different parts of Australia, but I think there's going to be a lot of traveling fans for this, and being able to do that at our home arena in front of our fans, and bring a lot of new fans around the game that may not have been engaged with the NBL, I think is really unique and special. And the fact that this tournament is coming out to our shores again, I don't know if everyone fully understands the gravity of the situation. And I think the NBL did a fantastic job of announcing it. I thought the drone show over Sydney Harbour was elite. And so if that's any guide to what the event's going to look like and the tournament's going to look like in September, I'm really excited about it.
I've seen a lot of comments online. You talk about the passionate fans that both of those clubs have, and I think there'll be a big traveling contingent as well, which is super exciting. You've been around basketball at the highest level for the majority of your life. Could you ever envision that these two kind of powerhouses would then be on your shores? You'd be playing against them leading into your own season? Because just the idea as a whole, it sounds pretty crazy. And I'm sure that everything that you'd understand that more than anyone, the magnitude of these clubs, it's unbelievable.
It is. I truly thought that, we would be the ones that would hopefully be traveling over to different parts of Europe and playing over in their stadiums, because I know just the operational and scheduling challenges of getting teams, true teams to travel from Europe out here in their preseason, especially these two teams as well. And passionate fans. I mean, you see the videos of what goes on in those stadiums. I don't know if we're going to be allowed purple flares and gold flares in Kudos, but I do think that their fans travel really well. They're passionate. I was speaking with their president the other day, and he was talking about how many fans they usually have. 2,000 or 3,000 fans that are traveling per away game. Now, albeit that's in different parts of Europe, but if we can have half of that are traveling into Sydney for this tournament, it's going to be just a really exciting time. And the fact that our players, the more exciting part as well is our players get to play against some of the best players in the world. Kendrick Nunn, Chetty Osman, Wendy and Gabriel, like just to name a few. They're in elite company, and so I think it's going to be a really important, couple of games in our preseason and lead into the year, and probably just get us in good form.
We might have to get some sort of exemption. We can have flares in Kudos Bank for one game. We're very special. We'll figure something out. If anyone can pull it off, that'll be you. But we talk about the Kings and the roster you've put together. You made a massive splash at the start. And we want to talk about each of those individuals you've obviously signed in Delhi, Kendrick Davis, what it means for the club going forward. But perhaps just to start this, and I talk about in this period of free agency and clubs how you're always looking years in advance. The planning doesn't just start when the season ends or in hypothetically halfway through NBL 25 is what do we need for NBL 26. You've reached the ultimate success multiple times now with the Kings, and you've built this core that continues to roll over and help get to where you want to be, which is holding a trophy at the end. How does that work? Can you put the fans in the mind of a GM where it's like, you know what, we want to win here in NBL 26, but in a couple of years' time, maybe that person's off contract. We can add them to the core. Is a lot going on than just a year ahead.
It is, and I wish that there was an easy explanation around how it works, because I think it is all situational. And I think other teams have done also a really good job at looking to plan. You know, what Illawarra have been able to do this offseason and bring back a large contingent of their core group who won a championship. You know, continuity in this league has proven success, and majority of the team that won in Illawarra was there the year before. And I think when we, you know, won our back-to-back championships as well, that second year there, and even the first championship, there was a rostered on 5 or 6 guys who'd been around the club, you know, for 4 or 5 years. And I think that's important in everything we do. I think so. It's balancing the win now mentality versus long-term sustained success. And you know, I think we're getting to the point where we want to be doing that year on year and be contenders year on year. And I think some clubs are really good at it. And yeah, we want to be in that mix. But I think for us, when we're balancing that, it's finding the right players, knowing what, you know, the contract status is of other players around the league, kind of timing when guys are either coming off contract, so you don't be left in a situation where all your guys are coming off at once, they exit, and then you're left bare bones. You need to have, you know, and this year's a perfect example, is we had 7, 8 guys returning. And so we've made some big splashes, but we've only signed 3 players, you know, and one of them's a returning player. So for us, it's 2 new players. And then you look at, you know, other teams and the level of talent around the league and the markets around the world, and some players are retiring, some players are going to play internationally. It's a tough challenge to be able to retain guys both at your team, but in this league, it's becoming extremely competitive. So I think having continuity, but having a number of guys rostered on year, it's going to be even more important over the next 1 to 2 years.
We said it was going to be tough to explain and then went on to explain it perfectly. That's why you're the best in the business, CP. But you talked about a couple of the splashes that you did make, and they were big. And it started with Matthew Dellavedova. Now, everybody was under the assumption that he was heading into free agency. Everybody knew this. We talked about a little bit with his flights around to meet with different teams. But in the end, he is a Sydney King, not just for this season, but for multiple years. Super exciting, I'm sure, for you. But to get that over the line, to understand when that he made that decision, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, this is one when you talk about trying to plan out your roster in advance. And again, it's always tough to, you know, I like to collaborate very much, and I'm lucky enough to be able to work alongside Brian Gorge and Luke Longley, Andrew Bogut, and these, you know, great basketball minds. And collaborating with coach is probably the most important thing. Doing that in season is always difficult too, because they're focused on the games ahead, but coach is really good at, you know, being able to put that to the side and focus around what we need to continue to think through and develop, so you don't enter free agency and have to pick it up immediately. So, you know, Delhi was someone that we tagged very early on in the piece when we were looking at our roster and all the intangibles that he brings both on the court, but particularly off the court from a leadership, culture perspective, and the way he's looked after his body, you know, and the relationships that he's built with both Brian, Luke, Andrew, and some of our teammates and Xavier. You know, again, I think that was really important bringing in. And through that process, we wanted to be, you know, front and center for him. But you never know when there's a player of his magnitude that's wanting to meet with multiple teams, and he does a lot of due diligence. You know, you never know where it's going to land. So the fact that we got the signature, I think, is a testament to, you know, the program that Brian's building, and I think the resources we want to put around Delhi. But again, I think that was probably the most difficult pitch that I've had to make, in that he was so in tune with all different areas of the business and the basketball side, and wanting to know about our medical staff, and his relationship with Dave Hillard from the Boomers helped, and, you know, what our roster looked like for the next 3 years. You know, I talked to him about that. And, you know, the other part to it as well is, and I touched on it when we talked about Kendrick, but I like to involve, you know, our leaders in what our roster build looks like, because I want these guys to play alongside players that they want to play alongside, that complement them. So talking to Matt, you know, Delhi, about what he wanted, you know, in his you know, upcoming import recruits, and then we landed on Kendrick. But, you know, Delhi was Delhi was great from the start, and I'm just thrilled that we get him for 3 years.
I love that point you make. And again, I've spoken about it on commentary through the last couple of years of when you are building a successful team, then going to not just the most talented guy on your roster, but those leaders, the playmakers, everybody who you understand is going to be a foundational piece, to understand what other pieces will help us get to the level and help you reach the most of your potential. That doing that and understanding, okay, this is the kind of player you want to go with. It's not just about going, say, this is the next talented guy. He really wants to come here. We'll just make it work. It's about finding that kind of puzzle piece. And I'm assuming that was a massive reason why Kendrick Davis ended up coming along to join him in the backcourt.
And yeah, look, it's a puzzle every single year and trying to find the right mix of talent and character and personalities and fit, injuries, all of that. There's luck. It all meshes into one big pot, and there's only one winner and 9 teams that feel really disappointed with how their season panned out. And I feel like the last 2 years have been really disappointing for our fans, for myself, for our ownership group, for our players. And we think we're better than what we've been able to show. And I think we just did a lot of work in identifying areas that we needed to improve. And every single one of those areas, again, on and off the court, led us towards Delhi as being the foundational piece to target in the offseason. And he was the first domino to fall. You know, we didn't want to take any other meeting or call or discussion until that was locked away. And then from that, it's kind of like a domino around, okay, now what pieces go complement him? And you mentioned Kendrick in that meeting with Delhi, and, you know, we asked how would you feel wanting to play alongside Kendrick? And, you know, he was really excited about the idea of it. He wanted to dig in more. He connected with Kendrick. They spoke. You know, there is truth around the fact that he was sending Kendrick clips of how he can help. But then he loved the idea, but then he really helped on the recruitment of him as well. You know, it's not going to be easy to price someone like that away from, you know, Adelaide. And I know he'd already said no to them, but internationally too, he's commanding a lot of money around the world. And we were lucky enough that he saw us as a destination that's going to help him grow as a player, grow, you know, in his off-court and professional habits. And he's got aspirations to make the NBA. And I think for him, playing alongside Delhi and learning from him was a draw card. And then you get to marry the two, where you got a talented guy who's wanting to develop, and you've got a leader who is playing some of his best basketball, and looks after his body, you know. And then you couple that with Xavier Cooks, and then, you know, all the pieces start to really fill in at that point. So yeah, I'm thrilled with the, you know, the acquisitions we've made and the targets we've hit this off season, because, you know, it just gives us a lot of certainty really early, and we're not coming into this next, you know, 1 to 2 months before training camp and not knowing what the roster really looks like.
The playing point acquisitions obviously speak for themselves in terms of talent, leadership, both with Delhi and Kendrick Davis. But one that probably now, I don't want to say it's forgotten about because of those signings, but Andrew Bogut coming on board as an assistant coach. And I've said this numerous times, outside of probably Brian Gorgon, you're going to find it hard to find a better basketball mind in Australian basketball history than a guy of Andrew Bogut's caliber. To have him now as part of the coaching staff, working with these guys, more hands-on in that aspect, is super exciting for the league in Australian basketball, but especially for obviously you and the Kings.
You're spot on. You know, sitting next to him at games, texting him during games, talking to him after games, he reads the game differently. I think that's a unique ability of ex-players, and I feel like that's why ex-players are also fantastic coaches. That's why you see, you know, a lot of NBA coaches that have all played. But I wasn't anticipating him dipping his toe in the coaching space. And just hearing how, you know, how he's going to take on this role to support Brian, you know, I'm really excited for our group, and coach is thrilled that he's got someone of his caliber, but also, yeah, you're right, his basketball IQ, his presence, his locker room presence, and his relationship that he builds with players and holding them accountable, all of these things, I think he will translate really well. And I'm excited to see him. And, you know, I've been able to be around him as a player, be around him as an owner and a member of our front office, and now seeing him as a coach, I'm really excited to see how he's going to thrive in this role because, again, seeing him on the sidelines, sitting there and having an opinion on things, now being able to help implement that, I think that's really exciting for our group. And then you look at the development of our bigs, under him as well, I think is going to be crucial. Kelly and Spurge and Zabe and Quat and all of our, I think he's going to really have a decent hand in their development. But just in general for our organization, just being able to have someone like that, just really, really excited about the opportunity for it.
Well, you mentioned the bigs there, so I have to ask you, obviously, the remaining pieces and the main piece obviously left. And everybody, experts we like to always we looked at it last year, they need more height. They need some sort of more.
We need size. Yes.
What does it look like in terms of how open are you to saying whether that's an import, whether that's a local, how patient you're willing to be with getting this last piece right? Because as you said, the puzzle is one thing, but we've seen it with a lot of other teams in the past. If one puzzle piece doesn't fit right, well, you don't get the completed piece, which is obviously a championship.
No, you're right. And look, the other one I didn't touch on was Makwaj Malawak and bringing him back. I just real quick, I think that he, what he's going to be able to bring to us, we're primarily going to play him at the 2 spot. And the rise and growth of Jalen Galloway coming back, he's fully healthy from his shoulder surgery. Bull Qualls obviously coming off coming into an important year in his career and his development too. So I think that we've got some other unique pieces around, but the obvious one, is the size. And that's something that's been talked about for some time, and the thought that we didn't have enough rebounding last year. I think the game's changed, in terms of the need to have a lot of big lumbering back to the basket bigs. And I think you saw that in the final series when teams ended up playing, small for a good portion of that and had one big on the floor at any one time. But in saying that, I know during the regular season, you're going to need size, you're going to need strength, you're going to need, in times where there's a poor matchup, you're going to need that big. So we have, that final roster spot. We've only got one left. We're just taking our time. We understand that being patient is important to find the right fit, but it is going to, we want someone who is a rolling big, a lob threat, rim protection, someone that you could throw the ball into and create something. And, that narrows the type of player that you're looking at from a local perspective predominantly. So again, whether that's a local or an import, we've got enough, time on our side now over the next 2 months to find that person. But everyone can be rest assured that finding someone with length and size and the 6'11" guy is probably our priority right now.
Is it safe to say as well that this will be a piece that finds its way on the roster before the season starts? This is not we've got an ace up our sleeve, we have to use a piece at some point. You're going to get another one.
We're going to get another one. Yeah, this isn't something that we're going to hold and enter into the season. I think that is becoming more difficult. Obviously, we had challenges with that in finding a guard last year in season. The traction of these players staying in the NBA or G League or Europe is stronger, and getting them here throughout the season is becoming more difficult. So this is something that we'll find before the season starts. And again, the importance of this play is probably for the depth in that position and situationally when you need it. We have a lot of faith and confidence in Kelly Leopepe. Yes, he's an undersized big, which was fantastic for us last year alongside Zabe. And Jason Spurgeon's having a really important offseason playing NBL 1 East. So we've got a lot of confidence in those guys. But at the same time, I think this piece that we want to bring in is someone's going to support that position and be used in different scenarios and find their way potentially into a decent playing role. But, for the most part, it's we just need some more size and gives our bigs also some more, competition in practice throughout the year.
It's a good point. It's very exciting right now for the Sydney Kings. And I can't let you go, CP, without quickly talking about what we've seen with the draft combine and Alex Tui. Obviously, you got to see him firsthand for a couple of years as a next star, and now getting closer and closer to achieving his ultimate goal. He looks bloody good in the combine. He looks really like that talent that we've all seen here in the NBL of what he can actually help a team with and be productive in the next level.
I think, yeah, he's. It's been great to see him, and unfortunately, the time doesn't permit us to be able to watch these scrimmages at anything other than 4 a.m. in the morning. But having 15 points, on 5 of 7 shooting, and 2 of 3 from 3 in that first game, and then had a really strong outing, today in the third scrimmage. I just think everyone, once they get to see him in person, and meet with him, obviously what he brings off the court and his personality and his drive is one thing, but then seeing him on the court, I know that he's been challenged at times by teams in the NBA questioning his ability to shoot the ball, from 3 consistently. And I truly feel that he's been able to show that both in the drills. He was one of the top, beat Cooper Flagg in his 3-point percentage in that drill, and then, shooting it so well in those scrimmage games. I think it's proving to teams that he can catch and shoot. He can shoot off the dribble, but he also can create for himself. 3 steals today. It's just really good to see. And from all reports, you see his stock rising. And this is a really important period where the only time you get to be in front of all 30 NBA teams and GMs before you're doing individual workouts. So, yeah, I'm thrilled for him. I think he's a first-round pick, and I'm just really happy for him and his family.
Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing the Sydney Kings name called out alongside his when he gets on stage, and hopefully he's a first-round pick. CP, thank you so much for catching up with us, and make sure you can book me in at some sort of dinner in Vegas around Summer League. I'm trying to get my schedule worked out. I know you'll be busy, but I'd enjoy some sort of dinner, please.
Done. Mexican at Aria.
Sounds good, mate. Good luck with everything. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on.